Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly Q&A session, and today it is my pleasure to welcome here our coach Richard. So Richard, how are you today? It's really nice to see you.
Well, I'm doing great today, Veronica, and pleasure to be with you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Actually, today I had a little bit lazy day and the weather outside was not so nice, so that's why I spent most of the time inside. So yeah, but still now as the evening is approaching here, I'm getting more energy and I'm really looking forward to the questions and to this Q&A session.
So am I. Good. All right, let's get
So,
going.
awesome. Actually, we got two questions on YouTube for our today's session. And the first one would be we have a question from Diana. I read somewhere that people may have hallucinations because of no sleep, and it activated a new fear. Never had or even thought about something like this before, and now I'm going through a speed bump. So, what do you think, Richard? What are your thoughts like about hallucinations and how to approach this fear of the Diana?
Yeah. Well, Diana, thank you so much for the question. I'm sorry to hear that you're kind of going through a speed bump now. I've done a lot of coaching in the last 2 years. I've never encountered anyone who's had hallucinations from it. And we've had a lot of clients, certainly, who've had a lot of sleep deprivation. I mean, I have read cases where people don't sleep for weeks, and yes, things can happen. But if it happens, it's super rare and super extreme. I think what often happens, Diana, is that people hear about something scary, and then just because they kind of have a tendency for anxiety, a tendency to be in fight or flight, they kind of latch onto this, and the fear that's kind of maybe free floating or free floating anxiety then just kind of gets channeled into this one thing, and so we become afraid of it. There are all kinds of things that we could be afraid of. I mean, we could be hit by a meteorite. We could, be in an airplane crash. All these things, I mean, are outside possibilities, but it's just not real practical to be kind of focused on these. And I think it's interesting to look at the difference between thoughts and thinking. I mean, we have upwards of like 50,000 thoughts per day. Somebody calculated this. I'm not sure how. And then a lot of them are just really kind of nothing thoughts like, oh, I have to pick up a loaf of bread at the store. But some of them are more distressing. But we can choose whether to kind of go with this thought and run with it and engage with it or not. So if we have the thought, what if I get a hallucination? Okay, oh, that's interesting. Look at that thing my brain just threw me, and yeah, it's understandable. This might be a little scary, but we can choose not to push the thought away, but just not engage with it. And I found that when I started doing this during my recovery, this made such a difference. I would just latch on to a lot of these scary thoughts, and the more I thought about them, the more I kind of amplified the fear that I had. And when I just realized that I have the power not to engage with them and to, think about other things instead, things went much better. And I think they would for you too.
Absolutely. So I totally agree, and this is a really great approach. To see this is just a thought. I mean, I believe you have been going through a really intense moments with insomnia, and you haven't experienced hallucinations. So there is no reason why you would experience them in the future. But uh, even if in some really rare case this would happen, this is really nothing strange or unusual or so to say scary, because sometimes we may have a very lively dream that may resemble hallucinations, and this happens when we are kind of in between the fully awake state and this light sleep stage. So in this stage we can experience these dreams, and they can be very lively, sometimes even scary. We can experience nightmares, we can experience fear, but this is all fleeting. This doesn't stay with us forever. It is, and what is important is how we approach it. We can just, after this happens, we can just acknowledge, oh, this was not a very pleasant experience, but this is behind me. And it doesn't have to happen again. Rather, it's just the fear that is keeping those that is giving us the most struggle, right? So approaching it as just a thought, like Richard suggested, like this is a thought or a fear that I'm afraid of, but I don't have to latch onto this, rather to see it as like not a real thing, right? It just a thing that my brain is afraid. Then that's it. We don't have to engage with it, and this is really incredibly helpful. And like Coach Richard mentioned, it makes a whole lot of difference. So cool. I think we have answered this question. And another question we got was from Muhammad. So, and he shares, hi, I tried stimulant drug one time and then I got insomnia. Since last year, had string of zero sleep. Now no longer have fear, but after 2 months of learning, still no sleep. How to keep believing this will work? So what do you think, Richard?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the question, Mohammed. And certainly, I mean, certain drugs are going to keep us awake, and a stimulant is going to keep us awake. Now, I mean, obviously, you tried that once and didn't sleep that night, and maybe the next night would be a problem. But obviously, it's been a long time inside of your system. But this is often how insomnia gets started, that we have a bad night because of something, and it can be anything. It can be a crying baby, it can be back pain, it can be a medication we take. And then, we find that very scary, and kind of the primitive brain, the fear center kind of kicks in and think, oh, what if this happens again? What if I never sleep again? So it's all these kind of what ifs that are triggered by this original experience. And there's nothing special about having taken a particular drug, because it could be anything that disrupts the sleep.
Mhm.
And it's important to distinguish between, sleep disruptions, again, which can be a medication, of crying baby, a back pain, and actual insomnia, where we kind of get into this loop where we start worrying about our sleep. And the more we worry about it and catastrophize about it, the more difficulty we have sleeping. And then the more difficulty, and then there's just more worry. So it goes round and round like this. So there's no kind of set answer to what to do, because our whole program, our whole approach to insomnia is kind of is the solution. And there are all kinds of things we can talk about. We can talk about again, as we said for the prior question, not not getting off into a lot of thinking when we have a particular thought. We can talk about self-kindness. We can talk about befriending wakefulness. So there are a lot of other things that we can do that our whole program is based around. And I'm not sure, was there any other aspect to the question, Veronika, that?
The aspect is like how to keep believing this will work, because he was asking, like he was sharing that since last year, now no longer have fear, but after 2 months of learning, still no sleep. So obviously he's been a lot on our channel and learning in the
Yeah,
past 2 months,
yeah,
and he's apparently losing his belief.
yeah. Yeah, so if you've been learning a lot of things from the channel, Mohammed, that's great. And a lot of people find that that's all they need, this education and kind of making the mindset shifts and so forth. That's great. But we also have, programs. We have a group program called the Insomnia Immunity Program. And a lot of people find this helpful to contextualize, what's going on with your particular insomnia issues. A lot of people find that they feel very isolated, even if they're getting good education. They feel isolated, and so if they want to take part in a program, then they realize, oh, there are other people with this, and they get mutual support. So, and then we also have coaches like Veronika and I both, do one-on-one coaching. So there are a lot of other resources, and if you find you're not, making the progress you want, from the videos and so forth, the books, then we can talk about other options like our immunity program.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree that it's incredibly helpful to have this back and forth with question answer, because then we can much easier to untangle like where the trouble lies. Because when people are supposed to figure it all on their own, sometimes it may feel too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one thing what I would add is that it can take even months like to recover from insomnia. And sleep is really at the end of this process. In between, we are learning how to relate to wakefulness, how to relate to tiredness, how to relate to how to our fears and anxieties and our thoughts and emotions and all these things. And these are kind of like short-term goals to change our relationship, to see the new approach to these things. And really, eventually, at the end of this process, the peaceful sleep is waiting for us. And how to keep believing this will work. It's very natural like to lose beliefs that, oh, I'm doing so much and still nothing is changing. But in fact, like belief is not needed for this process to evolve, because sleep happens whether we believe or not, right? We might have light sleep, deep sleep, sleep that we are not really aware of, hypersleep, like dream-like sleep. But there is still sleep. It is happening in between, or even when we are learning, even when we are just trying to sometimes chase it. Maybe then it becomes a little bit elusive. But important is like we are moving forward step by step. So really necessarily the belief is not needed like as such. I believe this will work, so that's why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it because I want to educate myself. I want to learn how to approach this in a new way. And I believe that the hope and the belief will evolve as we see these little changes that are like really uncovering along the way. So cool. I hope this was helpful, Mohammed. And we are getting live questions. Right. So the first one would be for from Sagari. So hi, Sagari. What about your opinion on neuromodulation devices that claims to activate parasympathetic nervous system? So, what do you think, Richard? Just to explain very shortly, we have like in our autonomous nervous system, we have parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, and sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. And when we are going through insomnia, this fight or flight is basically constantly activated. And there are some devices, for example, a clip on your ear that is activating this parasympathetic nervous system. Do you have any opinion on this, like whether this could help Richard in our insomnia?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, Sagari. Um, I don't know a lot about these devices. I did order a device, in the thick of my insomnia once, and it was some kind of thing that fit on my scalp, and you press a button, and I forget the detail. I forget what it was called. I think I tried it for a couple of weeks and I sent it back. I don't know what the science is here. I think we need to kind of be careful with some of these. I mean, research may show that they work, and if so, I'm totally fine with that. But I think we have to be careful with using gizmos and devices and so forth, because sleep is a natural process. And yes, there are those of us with insomnia, but we've gotten so much success with so many people in our programs, and uh, they didn't rediscover their natural sound sleep by using devices. So if you find something that works, great. That's great, and maybe the research will find something that there are other things that are going to work. And if they have no side effects, like sleeping pills usually have some side effects. They have no side effects and they work. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
there are other things that maybe can help. Maybe things like meditation can help. That can help calm the nervous system. I meditate and I like it. I don't do it really in order to sleep. I do it because I like the way kind of I feel more centered and not as reactive to things generally.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, if it works for you, great. But I wouldn't spend a lot of money or try a lot of different things when we know that there are things that do work, like a lot of the principles we have in place.
Mhm. Yeah, that's actually what I think as well. Like, I mean, if this is like a support tool for you, even if you see like this is helping you, then yeah, why not? Try it out. So it can help, like if it and but it I think it serves the same like meditation, for example, but like just to calm the nervous system. But I don't think it would work in the long run, because the more we try to rely on things that are external, that well it will make us sleep, then the more it can backfire, because all we need for sleep is already within us.
Yeah.
Right. We have a question from Annie. So hi, Annie. Hello. How do you show your brain that it's not dangerous and that it doesn't have to be afraid, but you yourself are so afraid in this moment?
Right. Right.
So, what do you think,
Yeah.
Richard?
Well, thank you for the question, Ani. And I'm sorry you've been experiencing some of this fear. Um, One of the things that really helped me when I was dealing with this, and I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'd have, be feeling agitated and anxious and so forth, was at first I tried to kind of talk myself out of it. Okay, there's nothing to be afraid of. Nervous system, you're overreacting. Well, this is true. This is true. But our fear center, this more primitive part of the brain, developed way before we had logic or language. So it can be the helpfulness of talking ourselves out of it, can help a little, but it can be really limited. So it helps more to to show our brain by our behavior that there's nothing scary. So, for example, 10,000 years ago, if there were a grizzly bear outside our cave, then we'd all wake up, we'd be scared, and you know we it would be appropriate to be scared. But today, if we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's not really anything literal to be afraid of. So the brain takes notice of how much we're focusing on this fear. So it's appropriate to focus on the fear when it's a real fearful thing, a real dangerous thing like a bear. And it's not appropriate to focus on it when it's a perceived threat, like being awake. So the more that we focus on it, the more we're reinforcing to the brain that this really is serious.
Hmm.
I used to spend like upwards of 5 hours a day thinking about my sleep and my anxiety and so forth. And when I just cut this down to like a half hour, and it took a while to cut it down because it was a really ingrained habit, this helped so much. I wasn't amplifying this fear so much. So behavior is much more important. Um, Focusing on, we don't want to push the feeling away, but we want to focus on other things. So once we acknowledge the fear, we have kind of non-reactive acknowledgement of, okay, I'm scared of this, that it doesn't feel good, then just don't dwell on it so much and think about other things. And if it's the middle of the night and you are just kind of lost in the loop of fear and so forth, it may be helpful to do something else. It may be helpful to read a book or watch a show, or just kind of walk to the other part of the house. And this will kind of take your focus off of the fear. I hope that's helpful.
I believe it is. And actually, we have a very similar question that's from TPA. Hi, Veronica. I'm sleeping now around 4 or 5 hours a night, which is okay, but to wake up nearly every morning with a high level of anxiety, and this continues through my day. I'm
Yeah.
accepting my feelings and living my life, but I still have trouble to fully emerge in the anxiety. It's draining, and this definitely caused my fatigue and exhaustion.
No.
So, You basically answered this question, Richard. Do you have any follow-up advice for TPA?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, TP. I'm sorry you're having this anxiety. I mean, I certainly had the same thing. I would tend to fall asleep okay and during my insomnia, but then I would wake up early. And sometimes it might be 3 o'clock, and sometimes I'd get back to sleep, and sometimes I wouldn't. And sometimes it would be, 4:30. And I think just with time, I followed the approach that we teach here. When I discovered this approach, and for many years I didn't know anything about this approach, and then with time, finally the anxiety got better. Um, there are some people who have more significant anxiety issues, and it may be helpful to talk to a therapist or a counselor about this. I mean, we're perfectly fine with that, and we do have clients who do that. The other thing, and I did some of that. The other thing to keep in mind is it just takes time. Um, Very often, this insomnia pattern is very ingrained, and it just takes time for it to finally, settle down. So I don't know how long this has been going on for you, but it'll take time. And if you need some extra support from a therapist, there's nothing wrong with that. That may well help.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And now, as I'm reading through the comments, something really nice happens here. We have a question from Veronika. I once had a consecutive nights with zero sleep, and after that, I developed a fear that you can eventually die from lack of sleep. Is this true? And somebody, Rodolfo actually, answered to Veronika. I had the same fear as Veronika. The body always gets what it needs. So he is actually answering, no matter how hyper aroused we are, years of intense insomnia taught me that. Daniel recently uploaded a video on the subject. So, yes, I totally agree. I had my insomnia started with consecutive 14 nights of not sleeping, and it was really scary, really exhausting. But I definitely didn't die from this, although I mean, the fear was extremely intense. And really, the very first thing that I learned as I came to the sleep court school was that sleep is inevitable. We cannot like cannot avoid sleep, and basically sleep happens even when we are not aware of it. And this was actually what was happening, like when I had these like initial bout of insomnia. Like towards the morning I was weirdly peaceful. I definitely knew I was hyper aroused because I could hear the sounds and lights in some distant way. But this like peaceful feeling, I believe that was already some kind of sleep happening. It was not the conscious restful sleep, but already my body was taking already what it needed for me to function the next day. It was rather the fear that made me feel like paralyzed, that I can't do anything because I'm too exhausted, I'm too scared, and I literally wasn't able to do anything. But not because of the lack of sleep in the first place. It was rather because of the fear of not sleeping, because the fear was so intense and it was so scary because I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was gonna die, right? Because like I mean, sleep is like one of the basic functions of the body, and I was literally robbed from sleep, and nobody could tell me what was going on with me. So definitely uh, you can't die from lack of sleep. So that's what I wanted to share. Right, let's skip to another question, if you don't mind, Richard.
Oh, sure.
We have a lot today, which is really wonderful. I really love it when it's so busy. And wonderful, we have a thank you note from Sunny Sis. Your channel has really helped me accept insomnia, and sleep has gotten 70% better. I keep moving forward. A big thanks to this channel. Thank you so much for jumping in and sharing this wonderful message. And right, we have a question from posting free something. Hey, I have some questions. I they get feared or triggered from the fellow comments that explain how they have been suffering and going through hell from years. And another question is, I know I can perform the next day, well, even without sleep. It's just anxiety which amplifies it, and so I can sleep too. But after reading other people being scared of it, I get fear. Very natural. What are your thoughts, Richard?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the question. Um, so we do have students occasionally who say that they're triggered by hearing the stories of other people who really, struggled with sleep.
Mhm.
And this can happen. I find that overall people benefit so much more on average from hearing other people's stories. And even if other people have described some, things that are really very unpleasant, um, we don't have to assume that we're going to have the same result that they did or the same struggles that they did. I think that what happens is we have this kind of tendency for anxiety, and then when we hear about something scary, our anxiety kind of channels into that. Okay, so it could be any, again, as I spoke about earlier, if somebody is afraid of flying, for example, their anxiety gets channeled into, well, what if the plane crashes?
Right.
Or we hear about somebody who falls and breaks their leg. What if I slip and break my leg? So
Mhm.
there are all kinds of things that we can be fearful of, and one of the things that we can pick up on is, oh, this other person had this terrible insomnia. It lasted for years and years. What if that happens to me? Well, the problem isn't so much that the other person had that problem and they're witnessing that. The problem is that we just kind of take that and assume the worst, that we identify with them. And as I was saying before, um, we don't have to engage with every thought that we have. So, yeah, okay, well, Joe had this problem with sleep and Susie had this problem with sleep. That doesn't mean that I'm going to have the same problem. And I don't have to dwell on that. So I hope that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I remember once Daniel said, we can't go on this journey completely untriggered. And
Mhm.
I believe this is true. And it's not a problem that we get triggered. The problem, or I don't want to call it a problem, but we learn so much from our reaction. Like, aha, this is triggering me. This means there is the fear behind it. There is some emotion. Okay, so if it is an emotion, emotions are not fleeting. This is a signal from the brain, and
Mhm.
all we need to do is to process this emotion. So if it is fear, then where is this fear in your body? Does it lie in your chest, in your heart? Is it in your stomach, or is it a lump in the throat? And all you need to do is just bring your full attention and focus to this fear that is basically somatizing in your body. And then uh, just stay with it, allow it to be there rather than turn away from it or avoid it. And because, like thoughts and emotions, they are signals from our brain, and the signals want to be heard. So when we lean into the emotions rather than run away from them, we are teaching the brain that even this emotion is safe, and it will not see it as a problem, because our brain loves problems. It's literally excited. Oh, problem! Let me send some more of it so you can solve it, right? So when you just approach it in a way like, oh, I'm triggered. This means there is a fear behind it or some underlying emotion. What I need to do, I need to process the emotion. That's it. Right. So, okay. I hope we have answered your question. And one last question for today we have from Udette. Hello. When I feel that there is something inside my eye, whether eyelashes or dust, I get nervous and cannot sleep. Or if I feel anything, even in my teeth, what does this feeling mean? I think basically what it is talking about hyperfocus. And when we are hypervigilant, we can be very aware of a certain um, bodily processes. So how to approach this, Richard? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, well, I agree with that, Veronica. And so I think when we have anxiety, again, we can, as I've said before, we can focus on different things, and things become more bothersome. We notice things that we wouldn't otherwise. And so obviously, if there's something really going on with your eye or ear, see your doctor. But assuming that there isn't, this is so common, and so many people with anxiety or hyperarousal experience that. So if there's nothing wrong medically with you, the issue is more anxiety or hyperarousal. And again, focusing on other things after you've kind of acknowledged non-reactively, oh, something's maybe a little something with my teeth or my eyes, then just kind of move on to other things. And the more we focus on things, the more they amplify. So after just kind of briefly acknowledging it, just let go and focus on other things.
Yeah, wonderful. I think we can wrap up here. Thank you so much for being here, Richard. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your wonderful questions. If anybody feels like you can benefit from back and forth with Coach Richard, I will post a link to one-on-ones with him. And yeah, I'm going to see you next time, all you guys. And with Richard, I will meet some other time in a live Q&A. So thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.